Horrifying. A father willing to disguise himself as a stranger, secretly returning to his own home, just to witness his children being tormented day after day. But the truly terrifying thing isn't the monster sitting right in the living room wearing a perfect smile and sparkling diamonds. The most horrifying thing is the frail, trembling woman barely holding herself together with nothing but ragged clothes and eyes too large for her hollow face. And she's the only one who dares to step in front of the hand raised to strike an innocent child. And that father has fallen in love with her. Loves her so much he's ready to burn this entire city down just to keep her safe. Do you dare to hear the rest of the story about a love born from darkness, from blood, from cries stifled in the freezing Chicago night? Because once that penthouse door closes, no one knows what's really happening inside. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. October 2025. Chicago. The wind off Lake Michigan cut through my thin jacket like a blade, sharp and relentless, the kind of cold that settles deep into bones already brittle from too many hungry nights. My name is Clara Thompson. I am 31 years old, though the mirror tells me I look closer to 45. My hands are rough, my wrists too thin, my eyes too hollow. I have not eaten anything warm in 3 days. I stood outside the gleaming glass tower on Lakeshore Drive, clutching a crumpled flyer that promised live-in, housekeeper, nanny, immediate start. Room and board provided. The paper was damp from the drizzle ink smearing across my fingers. I had walked 4 miles to get here because the bus fare was the last dollar I owned. My shoes, cheap canvas sneakers bought secondhand 2 winters ago, were soaked through. Each step made a wet squelch. The doorman looked me up and down. I knew what he saw: a woman, too thin hair pulled back in a fraying ponytail coat, 2 sizes too big because it had once belonged to my father. I tried to stand straighter. I tried to look like someone who belonged. Application, he asked, voice flat. I handed him the flyer. I called yesterday. Clara Thompson. He glanced at a tablet, then at me again. Elevator to the penthouse. Someone will meet you. The ride-up was silent except for the soft hum of the machinery and the frantic thudding of my own heart. I had not slept more than 3 hours in the last week. The shelter had turned me away twice because of overcrowding. I had spent the last 2 nights curled on a bench in Millennium Park coat, pulled over my head, listening to the wind howl and praying. No one would steal what little I carried in my backpack. A change of clothes, a cracked phone with no 8 minutes left, and the tiny silver locket that held the only photo I had of my mother. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. Marble floors stretched endlessly. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the dark lake and the glittering skyline. I had never stood in a place so clean, so quiet, so rich. A tall man in a charcoal suit waited near the entrance. He was fair-skinned, broad-shouldered, with dark hair neatly combed and eyes the color of storm clouds. Something about him felt dangerous, not loud, not obvious, but the way a blade feels dangerous when it rests quietly in its sheath. Miss Thompson. His voice was low, calm, almost gentle. Yes, sir. My own voice came out small, hoarse from disuse. I'm Vincent Moretti. Please come in. I stepped forward, carefully, afraid my wet shoes would leave marks on the marble. He noticed. Of course he noticed. You're soaked, he said. There's a bathroom down the hall. Dry off. I'll wait. I hesitated. I don't want to trouble. It's no trouble. He gestured again, firmer this time. I obeyed. The bathroom was larger than the room I had shared with 3 other women at the last shelter. Heated floors, thick towels that smelled faintly of cedar. I peeled off my jacket and shirt, shivering violently. My ribs showed beneath pale skin. My arms were dotted with old bruises from nights spent sleeping on concrete. I dried myself as quickly as I could, put my damp clothes back on, and returned. Vincent Moretti stood by the window now, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. When he turned, his gaze swept over me, quick, assessing, but not unkind. Sit, he said, indicating a cream-colored sofa that probably cost more than I had earned in my entire life. I perched on the very edge, hands folded tightly in my lap. I need someone to live here full-time, he began. 4 children. Twins Mia and Max, 7 years old. Sophie, 4. Luca, 2. Their mother. He paused, jaw tightening. She passed away last year. I travel often for work. I need someone reliable, someone kind. I swallowed. I'm good with children, Mr. Moretti. I raised my younger siblings after our mother died. I can cook, clean, do laundry, whatever you need. He studied me for a long moment. You're not asking about salary. I just need a roof, I said quietly. And food, that's all. Something flickered across his face, something raw, something pained. He looked away toward the lake. I'll pay you $3,000 a month cash. Room, board, health insurance. You start tomorrow if you want the job. $3,000. In cash. My heart stuttered. I could pay off the back rent I owed the shelter. I could buy real groceries. I could breathe. I want it, I whispered. Thank you. He nodded once. There's one condition. You live here. No days off for the first 3 months. I need to know the children are safe when I'm gone. I understand. He walked me to the elevator. Before the doors closed, he spoke again softer. Get something to eat tonight, Clara. You look like you're about to collapse. I nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in my throat. The doors slid shut. I cried the whole way down. That night I slept in a cheap motel room I paid for with the last $20 in my pocket. I ate a single granola bar from my backpack and drank water from the sink. I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself this was real. That tomorrow, I would wake up somewhere warm, that I might finally stop being so afraid. I did not know then that Vincent Moretti had watched me leave through the lobby cameras. I did not know that he had already run every background check possible on me. I did not know that even as he stood in his pristine penthouse, guilt was already clawing at him, guilt that he had let his fiancée Elena spend so much time alone with his children, while he chased power in the shadows of Chicago. He had noticed the changes in them. Mia no longer laughed at his jokes. Max flinched when anyone raised their voice. Sophie clung to her blanket like it was armor. Luca cried every time Elena picked him up. Vincent had told himself it was grief, that Elena was strict but not cruel, that he was imagining things because he felt so helpless without his late wife. But deep down a darker suspicion had taken root, and that suspicion had grown into something violent, something that kept him awake at night, fists clenched, imagining the worst. He had decided to find out the truth the only way a man like him knew how, by disappearing, by becoming someone else, by walking through his own home as a stranger. Tomorrow he would tell Elena he had to leave town for a month. He would hire a trusted man to answer his phone calls to sound like him on speakerphone. Tomorrow he would shave his beard, dye his hair darker, wear plain work clothes, and return to his own penthouse as Tony, the new overnight janitor. Tomorrow he would watch, and listen, and wait. And somewhere deep inside him, a part he rarely acknowledged was already terrified of what he would find. But even more terrifying was the quiet, fragile woman he had just hired, the woman who looked at him with eyes too big for her face, eyes that carried the weight of too many cold nights and empty plates. He had felt something stir when she spoke, something fierce and unfamiliar, something dangerously close to protectiveness. He pushed it down, hard. He had children to save, he had a monster to expose, and he had no right to feel anything else. Not yet. October 2025, Chicago. The next morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of dawn that presses against the windows like it wants to get inside and steal what little warmth you have left. I woke up on the motel mattress with my coat still on muscles, stiff neck aching from the lumpy pillow. My stomach was a tight hollow knot. I had not eaten since the granola bar the night before. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long minute, staring at my backpack, trying to decide whether the 20-minute walk to the nearest dollar store was worth the energy it would cost me. In the end, I didn't go. I couldn't risk being late. I washed my face in the tiny sink, used my fingers to comb through my hair and put on the only clean blouse I had left, a faded blue cotton thing that used to belong to my older sister before she moved to Milwaukee and stopped answering my calls. It hung loose on me now. Everything hung loose on me. The walk to Lakeshore Drive took 47 minutes. I counted the blocks to keep my mind from spiraling. By the time I reached the tower, my legs were trembling and my vision kept blurring at the edges. The same doorman was there. This time he didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and sent me up. Vincent Moretti was waiting in the foyer when the elevator doors opened. He wore a dark sweater today instead of a suit, sleeves pushed to his elbows. His forearms were strong-corded, the kind of strength that came from more than just money and gym memberships. "Clara," he said. His voice was quieter than yesterday, almost careful. "You're early." "I didn't want to be late, sir." He studied me for a heartbeat too long. I wondered if he could see how badly I was shaking. "Come," he said. "The children are still asleep. I'll show you the apartment first." He led me down a hallway lined with framed black and white photographs, old Chicago streets, bridges in fog, a woman laughing on a pier. His late wife, I realized. The resemblance to the twins was unmistakable. The same wide eyes, the same stubborn chin. We passed a set of double doors, then turned into a smaller corridor. He opened the last door on the right. Your room. I stepped inside and stopped breathing. It was larger than any bedroom I had ever lived in. A real bed with crisp white sheets and a thick comforter. A dresser. A desk. A window that looked out over the lake. There was even a small sitting area with an armchair and a reading lamp. I stood in the doorway, afraid to step fully inside, afraid that touching anything would make it disappear. Vincent watched me. It's yours, he said quietly. As long as you're here. I swallowed hard. My throat hurt. Thank you, Mr. Moretti. Vincent, he corrected. When we're alone, the children call me Dad. Everyone else calls me Vincent. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He showed me the attached bathroom towels folded like hotel origami, a glass shower, heated floors. Then he took me to the kitchen. The kitchen was bigger than the entire apartment I had been evicted from 6 months ago. Stainless steel appliances, double ovens, a refrigerator so large I could have slept inside it. I'll leave a list of the children's routines, he said. Meals, school drop-offs, allergies. Sophie has asthma. There's an inhaler in every room, never more than 10 feet away from her. I nodded again, memorizing. He hesitated. Elena, my fiancée, will be here most days. She handles discipline when I'm away. She's strict, but she loves the children. The last sentence sounded forced, like he was trying to convince himself. I didn't reply. I had learned long ago that silence was safer than questions. Vincent looked at me, then really looked. His eyes were darker than I remembered, shadowed. You haven't eaten, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm fine. You're not. He opened the refrigerator, pulled out a carton of Greek yogurt, a container of fresh berries, and a small jar of honey. He set them on the counter with a spoon and a bowl. Eat. I stared at the food. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the spoon. Sit, he said, softer. I sat. I ate slowly, terrified. I would spill, terrified I would cry. The yogurt was thick and cold and tasted like heaven. The berries burst against my tongue. I had forgotten what real food tasted like. Vincent leaned against the island, arms crossed, watching me. When I finished, he spoke again. I have to leave tomorrow for a month. Business in New York. I'll call every evening. Elena will be in charge. I nodded. But I need you to understand something, he continued. His voice dropped lower. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me. Day or night. My private number will be in your phone by tonight. He handed me a new smartphone, sleek black, still in the box. My fingers brushed his when I took it. His skin was warm. Mine was ice. Thank you, I whispered. He didn't smile. He just looked at me like he was seeing something he hadn't expected to see. Then he turned and walked away. That afternoon, I met the children. Mia and Max were identical, except for the way they carried themselves. Mia bold, Max watchful. Sophie was small and pale, clutching a worn teddy bear. Luca toddled after his siblings, silent and serious. They stared at me with wide eyes. This is Clara, Vincent told them. She's going to help take care of you while I'm gone. Mia tilted her head. Are you nice? I knelt so I was eye level with her. I try to be, I said softly. Sophie hugged her bear tighter. Luca hid behind Max's leg. Vincent watched the exchange. Something raw passed over his face, something like grief, something like guilt. That night after the children were in bed, I sat on the edge of my new bed, staring at the phone Vincent had given me. I opened the contacts. His name was already there. Just Vincent. No last name. No title. I pressed my palm against my chest. My heart was racing too fast. I had not felt safe in years. And now I was terrified of how quickly I wanted to believe I could be. Across the city, in a dimly lit back office, above a legitimate construction company headquarters, Vincent Moretti sat alone. He had already made the call to the man who would impersonate him on the phone for the next month. The script was written. The voice matched. The alibi was airtight. He had shaved his beard in the bathroom sink, watching dark hair fall like accusations. He had dyed his hair 2 shades darker, cut it shorter, rougher. He had bought plain gray coveralls, worn work boots, a faded baseball cap. Tomorrow he would return to his own home as Tony, the new overnight janitor hired to deep clean the common areas after midnight. He would watch. He would listen. He would wait. And every time he thought of Clara, thin, trembling eyes, too large for her face, something violent tore through him. He had hired her because she was desperate. Because desperate people were loyal. Because she had nowhere else to go. But now sitting in the dark with a glass of untouched bourbon, he hated himself for it. He hated the way her gratitude made his chest ache. He hated the sudden burning need to shield her from the world he had built. The world of shadows, rival families, quiet threats in alleyways, and power that came at the cost of sleep. Just yesterday afternoon, on his way to a meeting, he had been forced to stop on Michigan Avenue. 3 men from the Rossi crew had stepped out of a black SUV blocking the street. No guns, not in daylight, just words. Moretti, the leader, had said, smiling like a shark. "Heard you're going soft." Bringing in strays now, Vincent had stepped closer. "Move." They hadn't. Not until he'd looked each one in the eye and said very quietly, "I remember faces." They had backed off. But the message was clear. His enemies were watching. And now Clara was inside his home. Fragile, starving, trusting. The thought of her caught in any crossfire made him want to put his fist through the wall. He stood. He walked to the window. Chicago glittered below, cold and beautiful and merciless. Tomorrow he would become Tony. Tomorrow he would begin the lie. And tomorrow, whether he admitted it to himself or not, something inside him had already shifted. Because when Clara had looked up at him in the kitchen, yogurt spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Eyes shining with something dangerously close to hope. He had felt it. A spark. A flame. A beginning of something so fierce it terrified him. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. "I'm sorry," he whispered to his children, to his late wife, to the woman sleeping in his guest room who had no idea what kind of storm she had just walked into. "I'm so damn sorry." October 2025, Chicago. The first full day inside the penthouse felt like stepping into someone else's dream, a dream so bright and clean it hurt my eyes. I woke before dawn in the softest bed I had ever known. The comforter was heavy, warm, scented faintly with lavender. For a moment I lay still, afraid to move, afraid the moment I acknowledged it, everything would vanish. My body ached from years of hard floors and colder nights, but the pain felt distant now, muffled by clean sheets and quiet. I rose quietly. My reflection in the full-length mirror startled me. Pale skin stretched too tight over sharp bones. Dark circles carved beneath my eyes, collarbones, standing out like accusations. I looked like a ghost wearing someone else's skin. I dressed in the same faded blouse and the only pair of slacks I owned, black, worn thin at the knees, and slipped into the hallway. The children were already awake, gathered around the kitchen island, like small, wary animals. Mia sat straight-backed spooning oatmeal with mechanical precision. Max stared at his bowl as though it might speak. Sophie clutched her teddy bear to her chest, rocking slightly. Luca, still in his footed pajamas, sat on a booster seat, tiny hands wrapped around a sippy cup of milk. Elena was there. She was tall, elegant, blonde hair swept into a perfect low knot. Her silk robe shimmered under the recessed lighting. Diamonds glinted at her ears, small but real. She looked like she belonged in magazines, not in a kitchen at 6 a.m. "Good morning, Clara," she said without turning around. Her voice was smooth, cool, polished. "The children eat at 6:30 sharp. No exceptions." "Yes, ma'am," I whispered. She finally glanced over her shoulder. Her eyes slid down my frame, lingering on the frayed hem of my blouse, the way my wrists looked fragile inside the 2 large sleeves. "You'll need to change into something more appropriate," she said. "We have standards here." I nodded, cheeks burning. "I'm sorry. This is all I have right now." Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. "We'll fix that later. For now, help Sophie with her oatmeal. She eats too slowly." I moved to Sophie's side. The little girl's spoon trembled. A small dollop of oatmeal fell onto the marble counter. Elena sighed sharply. "Sophie, manners." Sophie flinched. Her lower lip quivered. I reached out instinctively, wiping the spill with a napkin. "It's okay, sweetheart," I murmured. "Accidents happen." Elena's gaze snapped to me. "She needs to learn precision, Clara. Not coddling." I lowered my eyes. "Yes, ma'am." The rest of breakfast passed in brittle silence. When the children finished, Elena stood. "I have appointments," she announced. "Clara, the twins have school at 8. Sophie's preschool is at 9. Luca stays home. You'll manage the schedule." She left without another word, heels clicking like small gunshots down the marble hall. The moment the front door closed, the air changed. Mia let out a long, shaky breath. Max's shoulders dropped. Sophie hugged her bear tighter. Luca's eyes filled with tears. I knelt beside them. "Hey," I said softly. "It's just us now. You're safe." Mia looked up at me with huge, searching eyes. "Are you going to yell too?" My heart cracked open. "No, honey. I promise." I spent the morning moving through their routines like someone walking on glass. School drop-offs in a chauffeured black SUV that smelled of leather and money. Preschool pickup lines where other mothers wore designer coats and carried $1,000 handbags. I stood in my thin jacket, arms wrapped around myself against the wind, feeling every eye on me like judgment. When we returned to the penthouse, I made grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch, simple, warm, the kind of food I had dreamed about on nights when my stomach growled so loud it kept me awake. Sophie ate 2 full halves. Lucas smeared cheese across his cheeks and smiled for the first time that day. Max watched me the whole time. "You're not like her," he said quietly. I didn't know how to answer. I just touched his hair gently. "I'm here to help," I whispered. That afternoon, while the younger ones napped, I cleaned. I polished surfaces that were already spotless. I folded laundry that smelled like sunshine and fabric softener. Every task reminded me of how far I had fallen and how impossibly high this world sat above me. At dusk, I stepped out onto the private terrace for a breath of air. The city glittered below, endless and indifferent. I leaned against the railing, dizzy from hunger and exhaustion, and the sheer unfairness of everything. That was when I first saw him. A man in gray coveralls, baseball cap pulled low, pushing a cleaning cart along the service corridor that ran behind the penthouse. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a careful, deliberate grace that didn't match the uniform. He paused when he saw me. Our eyes met. For a single endless second, the wind stopped. He lifted his chin slightly. The cap shadowed his face, but I saw the line of his jaw, the quiet intensity in his posture. Then he nodded, once small, almost imperceptible, and continued down the corridor. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. I didn't know why. I didn't know it was Vincent. Across the city, in a shadowed alley off West Division Street, Vincent Moretti, dressed as Tony, stood face to face with 2 men from the Rossi crew. They had been waiting. The taller one stepped forward, hands loose at his sides. "Tony Wright, new janitor up at Moretti's place." Vincent kept his voice rough, lower than usual. "That's me." The second man smirked. "Boss wants to know if the big man's really gone. Word is he's soft these days. Distracted." Vincent felt the old rage rise, cold, controlled, lethal. He stepped closer. "You tell your boss that Vincent Moretti doesn't answer to rumors." The first man laughed. "Careful, janitor. Places like that have eyes. And ears." Vincent didn't flinch. "So do I." They stared at each other for a long beat. Then the men backed away, melting into the shadows. Vincent waited until their footsteps faded. Only then did he allow himself to breathe. He leaned against the brick wall, heart hammering. Not from the confrontation. From the memory of Clara on the terrace, thin, fragile wind whipping her hair, eyes wide with something between wonder and terror. He had almost spoken. Almost. The urge to cross the distance, to pull her into his arms, to tell her everything, it had been so strong it frightened him. He pressed the heel of his hand against his chest, trying to crush the ache. He had no right. He was lying to her. He was lying to everyone. And still, the sight of her standing there alone against the glittering city had torn something open inside him. Something raw. Something that felt dangerously like love. Love he had no permission to feel. Love he could not afford. He straightened. He had work to do. He had children to protect, and a woman to watch over from the shadows, from the lies, from the storm he had brought into his own home. He walked back toward the service entrance, coveralls heavy on his shoulders, heart heavier still. The night stretched ahead, long and cold, and somewhere inside the penthouse, Clara Thompson sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the closed door, wondering why a stranger in a janitor's uniform had looked at her like he knew every cold night she had ever endured, wondering why her chest hurt so much when she thought about him, wondering why, for the first time in years, she felt seen. October 2025. Chicago. The days began to blur into a strange rhythm of quiet terror and fragile tenderness. Each morning started the same. I rose before the children, moving through the penthouse like a shadow preparing breakfast, with hands that still trembled from years of cold and hunger. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee Vincent had stocked before he left, rich, dark, expensive beans that cost more per bag than I used to spend on rent for a month. I never drank any. It felt like stealing. Elena arrived at 7 sharp, always perfectly composed, always watching. That Tuesday, she found Sophie's teddy bear on the living room floor. The bear was old, one-ear floppy fur, worn thin from years of being loved. It had belonged to the children's mother. Sophie never let it out of her sight. Elena picked it up between 2 manicured fingers, as though it were contaminated. "This filthy thing again," she said, voice like ice cracking. "I told you to throw it out, Sophie." Sophie froze in the doorway, small hands twisting in her pajama top. "It's mine," she whispered. Elena's smile was thin, sharp. "Not anymore." She opened the kitchen trash compactor and dropped the bear inside. The machine whirred to life. Sophie's face crumpled. A single silent tear slid down her cheek. I felt the sound leave my throat before I could stop it, a small, broken sound. Elena turned. Something to say, Clara? My mouth was dry. She loves that bear, ma'am. It was her mother's. Elena's eyes narrowed. Her mother is gone. And I'm here now. Rules are rules. She pressed the button again. The compactor groaned, crushing what was left. Sophie sank to the floor, knees to chest, rocking silently. I knelt beside her without thinking, arms open. She crawled into them, face buried against my shoulder, tiny body shaking. Elena watched us for a long moment, then turned on her heel and left the room. I held Sophie until her sobs quieted to hiccups. Then I carried her to her bedroom, tucked her under the covers, and sat on the edge of the bed until she fell asleep, thumb in mouth, like a much younger child. When I returned to the kitchen, the trash had been emptied. No trace of the bear remained. That night, after the children were in bed, I sat in the laundry room folding towels that were softer than anything I had ever owned. My hands shook so badly I dropped one. I pressed my palms to my eyes, breathing hard. I had nothing left to give these children but my presence, my quiet promises, my body between them and whatever storm was coming. And it was coming. I could feel it. Across the city in the service corridors beneath the tower, Vincent Toney mopped floors that didn't need mopping, ears tuned to every sound from above. He had heard the compactor. He had heard Sophie's small, shattered cry. He had stood frozen behind the utility door, fists clenched until his knuckles bled white, fighting the urge to burst through to reveal himself to end it. But not yet. Not without proof. Not when one wrong move could bring the whole fragile house of cards down on his children and on Clara. Clara. The name burned in his chest like a live coal. Every time he saw her, thin, exhausted, moving through his home like she was afraid to leave footprints, he felt something tear wider inside him. Tonight after midnight, he had slipped into the penthouse through the service entrance, silent as a ghost. He had watched her from the shadowed hallway as she sat in the laundry room, shoulders bowed, face hidden in her hands. He had wanted God how he had wanted to step forward to kneel in front of her, to take those trembling hands in his and tell her everything. I'm here. I see you. I will protect you. Instead, he had retreated, heart pounding so hard it hurt to breathe. He hated himself for the cowardice. He hated himself more for the fire that had ignited the moment he first saw her on that terrace fire, that had only grown hotter, more consuming every time he watched her comfort his children, every time she whispered to them in the dark. It was wrong. It was impossible. She deserved safety, not a man like him, stained, shadowed, carrying enemies in every pocket. And yet the want was there, fierce and unrelenting, a living thing clawing at his ribs. Later that night, he walked the streets near the river coveralls exchanged for dark jeans and a hooded jacket. He needed air. He needed distance. He didn't get it. 3 men stepped out from behind a delivery truck on Orleans Street, Rossi crew again, faces he recognized. The leader, a thick-necked man named Frankie, smiled like he was greeting an old friend. "Tony," he said, mocking. "Or should I say, boss, you're looking tired. Late nights cleaning up after yourself." Vincent stopped. The wind off the river smelled of diesel and metal. "You got something to say, Frankie." His voice stayed low, calm. Frankie stepped closer. "Word is Moretti's gone soft. Letting some nanny run the house. Letting his fiancée run wild. People talk, you know." Vincent's jaw tightened. "People talk too much." Frankie laughed. "Careful, janitor. Places like yours burn easy." Vincent took 1 step forward. The other 2 men stiffened. He looked each of them in the eye. "When I want advice from street rats," he said softly, "I'll ask." They backed off slowly, grudgingly, but they backed off. Vincent waited until they disappeared around the corner. Then he leaned against the cold brick wall, breathing hard. Not from fear. From rage. From the knowledge that his enemies were circling closer, smelling blood. From the terror that one day soon that circle might include Clara. He pressed the back of his head against the wall, eyes closed. "I can't let her get hurt. I can't let any of them get hurt." And still, the image of her holding Sophie, rocking her, gently refusing to let go, played over and over in his mind. It hurt more than any wound he had ever taken. Because he loved her. He loved her in a way that terrified him, sudden, complete burning. He had no right. He had every right. The contradiction was tearing him apart. Back in the penthouse, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was warm. The sheets were clean. The city lights painted soft patterns across the walls. And yet I felt colder than I ever had on those park benches. Because now I knew what safety felt like, and I knew how easily it could be taken away. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the frantic beat beneath my ribs. I thought of the janitor again, the quiet man in gray coveralls who had looked at me like he carried every sorrow I had ever known. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand any of it. But in the darkness, in the silence, I whispered his name, Tony, like a prayer. And somewhere deep inside, a tiny, fragile hope began to flicker. Hope that maybe, just maybe, someone saw me. Really saw me. And maybe, just maybe, that someone cared enough to stay. October 2025. Chicago. The nights grew longer, the wind sharper, rattling the tall windows of the penthouse, like it wanted in. I had not felt truly warm in so many years that the constant heat of the apartment still startled me awake sometimes, my body expecting the bite of frost, the ache of concrete against my spine. I learned the children's secrets in fragments. Mia liked to read under her covers with a small flashlight after lights out. Max kept a tiny collection of smooth river stones in a shoebox beneath his bed, he said. They reminded him of the park his mother used to take him to. Sophie whispered to her new replacement, bear a soft blue one I had found in the linen closet, and quietly given her when Elena was out, when she thought no one was listening. Luca still woke twice a night, crying for Mama's small fists clenched around the edge of his blanket. I never told Elena about these things. I kept them like treasures hidden in the quiet corners of my heart. One evening after Elena had left for a dinner with friends, I sat with the children in the living room while a soft rain tapped against the glass. The twins were coloring at the low table. Sophie curled in my lap, thumb in mouth. Luca slept against my shoulder, warm and heavy. The silence was gentle, the first real stillness I had known in weeks. Mia looked up suddenly. Clara, yes, sweetheart, do you have a mommy? The question landed like a stone in still water. Ripples spread through my chest. I did, I said softly. She's not here anymore. Sophie lifted her head. Like our mommy, I nodded, throat tight. Like your mommy. Max stopped coloring. Does it hurt forever? I looked at each of them, 4 small faces turned toward me, trusting, waiting. Sometimes it hurts a lot, I told them honestly. But other times, it's softer, like remembering a warm day when it's cold outside. The hurt doesn't go away, but you learn to carry it. Sophie reached up and touched my cheek with her small, sticky fingers. You're sad too. I smiled even though it trembled. A little. But being here with you helps. Mia leaned forward. We like you here. The words broke something inside me, something I had kept locked away so long I forgot it could still crack open. I pulled them all closer. A small circle of warmth on the enormous cream sofa that probably cost more than every place I had ever lived combined. Across the penthouse in the shadowed service corridor, Vincent stood motionless, mop forgotten in his hands. He had come to check the floors, routine excuse lie. He had heard every word. He had seen the way Clara held his children like they were the only thing keeping her from falling apart. The sight struck him like a fist to the sternum. He leaned his forehead against the cool wall, breathing shallow, ragged. He loved her. God help him, he loved her more with every breath she took in his home. It was not gentle. It was not sweet. It was violent, fierce, and consuming, a wildfire racing through dry timber. Every time she smiled at his children, every time she whispered comfort in the dark, it fed the flames higher. And he hated himself for it. Because she deserved peace. Because he was poison, shadows, enemies, a life built on quiet threats and blood debts. Because the moment he revealed himself, everything she had begun to trust would shatter. He closed his eyes, knuckles white around the mop handle. I cannot want this. I cannot need this. But the want was there anyway, burning relentless, tearing him open from the inside. Later that night, after the children slept, I slipped out to the terrace again. The rain had stopped. The city lights reflected on wet pavement far below a glittering, unreachable sea. I wrapped my arms around myself, thin cotton sweater, no match for the October wind. Footsteps, soft, deliberate. I turned. Tony. The janitor. He stood at the edge of the service door cap, low coveralls slightly rumpled. He carried a small thermos. He didn't speak at first. Neither did I. Then he lifted the thermos. Hot chocolate. Thought you might be cold. My heart stuttered. I stared at the simple metal container as though it were made of gold. I can't. Please, he said quietly. His voice was rough around the edges, but kind. So kind it hurt. I took it. My fingers brushed his again, warm, steady. The heat seeped through the metal into my palms. I unscrewed the cap. Steam curled upward, rich with cocoa and a hint of cinnamon. I sipped. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. Tears pricked my eyes before I could stop them. He watched me silent. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded once. We stood there, 2 strangers, separated by glass doors and lies, while the city hummed far below. After a long moment, he spoke again, voice so low, I almost missed it. You're doing good things in there. For them. I looked up. They're good children. They just need someone to be gentle. His jaw tightened. Something raw flashed across his shadowed face. They do, he said. And you're giving them that. I swallowed. I don't know how long I'll be allowed to stay. He looked at me, then really looked. As long as you want to be here, Clara. The way he said my name made my knees weak. Like he had carried it inside him for years. Like it mattered. I felt dizzy, unsteady, the world tilting beneath me. I gripped the railing. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of clean soap and rain on his coveralls. Are you all right? He asked, voice urgent. I nodded, but the lie was weak. He reached out, slow, careful, and steadied my elbow with one large hand. The touch was brief. It was everything. I looked up into his face, still shadowed, but the eyes were familiar somehow. Storm dark, deep with things unspoken. For one endless heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he released me. I should go, he said roughly. I nodded, unable to speak. He turned. At the door he paused. Drink it all, he said. Stay warm. Then he was gone. I stood there until the hot chocolate cooled in my hands, until the wind stole the last curl of steam. Inside my chest, something was breaking open, something bright and terrifying. Hope, want, the first fragile threads of something I dared not name. Miles away, Vincent walked the dark streets near the river again. This time he was alone. No confrontations tonight. Just the echo of his own footsteps and the memory of her hand beneath his cold, thin trembling. He stopped beneath a street lamp breath fogging in the air. He pressed his fist to his chest hard as though he could force the ache back down. I touched her. I spoke to her. I gave her warmth, and every second of it was a betrayal of the disguise of the plan of the distance he was supposed to keep. But it was also the most honest thing he had done in months. He loved her, fiercely, irrevocably, with a force that left him breathless, and the war inside him raged louder than ever, guilt against longing, duty against desire, the man he was against the man he wanted to be for her. He looked up at the tower lights glowing soft in the night. Somewhere up there, Clara was drinking the hot chocolate he had made for her. Somewhere up there, she was safe. For now. He turned and walked into the shadows. The storm was coming. He could feel it in his bones. And when it broke, everything would change. October 2025, Chicago. The air in the penthouse grew heavier with each passing day, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. I began to notice patterns I wished I could unsee. Elena's voice changed when Vincent called each evening sweet, practiced the tone of someone reciting lines from a script. She would put the phone on speaker so the children could say goodnight. Their small voices were thin, careful, rehearsed. We were good today, Daddy. We miss you. They never mentioned the tears, the locked doors, the way Elena's hand would tighten on a shoulder until knuckles turned white. After the calls ended, the mask slipped. That Thursday, Sophie had another asthma episode. It started quietly, small wheezes during story time. I had noticed her breathing sounded tighter than usual all afternoon, but Elena dismissed it as dramatics. When the wheezing deepened into desperate, shallow pulls for air, Sophie's little face turned gray. I ran for the nearest inhaler. There was one in every room as Vincent had promised, but the one in the nursery was empty. Empty. I stared at the plastic device, shaking it as though that could summon medicine from nowhere. Panic clawed up my throat. Elena, I called, voice cracking. The inhaler, it's empty. Elena appeared in the doorway, arms folded. Then use another one. They're all the same batch. I checked yesterday. None of them have more than a puff or two left. Sophie's lips were tinged blue now. Her eyes were wide with terror. Elena sighed as though this were an inconvenience. She'll be fine. It's not that bad. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Numbness spread from my fingertips to my chest. I scooped Sophie into my arms, her body so light, so fragile, and ran to my room. In the bottom drawer of my dresser, beneath the few folded clothes I owned, was the small paper bag I had hidden. Inside, one brand new children's albuterol inhaler. I had bought it 3 nights earlier, walking 7 miles to the 24-hour pharmacy on the south side because the buses stopped running after midnight. I had used the last $32 I had left from my first week's pay money I was supposed to save for new shoes when the soles of my current ones finally separated completely. I had stood in the pharmacy aisle under fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects counting pennies, praying the total would come under $33. When the cashier handed me the change 17 cents, I had almost cried with relief. Now I pressed the inhaler to Sophie's mouth. Slow breath in, sweetheart, I whispered, voice trembling. Slow. She inhaled. Once. Twice. The wheezing eased color creeping back into her cheeks. Elena stood in my doorway watching. You bought that yourself, she asked, tone flat. I nodded, not looking up. She needed it. A long silence. Then Elena spoke again, colder than the lake wind. Don't think this makes you indispensable, Clara. You're still the help. She turned and walked away. I held Sophie until she fell asleep against my chest inhaler still clutched in her small fist. Afterward, I sat on the floor with my back against the bed, knees to chest, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I had nothing. I had risked the last of my money that could have bought food for weeks, a winter coat bus fare to somewhere safer, and I would do it again, because Sophie's life was worth more than my survival, because these children had become my survival. I pressed my face into my knees and wept silently, tears hot against cold skin. In the service corridor outside, Vincent stood frozen, hidden behind the half-open utility door. He had heard the entire exchange. He had seen Clara run with Sophie in her arms. He had watched her pull the inhaler from its secret hiding place. He knew exactly what that small act had cost her. His vision blurred not from tears, not yet, but from the sheer force of the rage and guilt and love that collided inside him like a storm breaking over open water. He slid down the wall until he sat on the cold tile floor, head in hands. She had spent her last dollar on his daughter. She had walked through the night alone, hungry, exhausted, so Sophie could breathe. And Elena had stood there and called her the help. Vincent's fists clenched until nails bit into palms. He wanted to tear the building apart. He wanted to storm through the door, gather Clara and the children, and disappear somewhere no one could ever touch them again. But most of all, he wanted to kneel at her feet and beg forgiveness for every second she had suffered in his house. The love inside him was no longer a flame. It was an inferno, burning away every rational thought, every careful plan. He loved her so completely it felt like dying. And the pain of it, of knowing she was sacrificing everything while he hid behind a false name, was unbearable. Later that night, he left the building through the loading dock. The wind was brutal, slicing through his coveralls. He walked east toward the river hood, up shoulders hunched. Near the bridge on Wacker Drive, 2 men stepped out from beneath the overpass. Rossi soldiers again, different faces this time, but the same smirking confidence. Janitor 1 said, "You're out late." "Moretti still gone," Vincent stopped. His voice came out low, dangerous. "You're persistent." The second man chuckled. "We're just checking in, making sure everything's stable up there." Vincent took a single step forward. The men tensed. He spoke slowly, each word carved in ice. "Tell your boss that if he sends one more message through you, I'll deliver the answer personally. And he won't like the handwriting." Silence stretched, brittle and sharp. Then the men backed away, disappearing into the dark. Vincent stood there until the echo of their footsteps faded. Only then did he allow himself to sag against the railing breath coming in harsh bursts. Not from the confrontation, from the memory of Clara's face when she gave Sophie the inhaler, exhausted, determined, beautiful in her quiet courage. He loved her. He loved her more than power, more than safety, more than the empire he had built. And the war inside him was reaching its breaking point, remorse, screaming against desire, duty, against the desperate need to claim her, to protect her, to make her understand she would never be cold or hungry or alone again. He looked up at the tower lights still glowing in the high windows. Somewhere inside, Clara was lying awake, probably still shaking from the night's terror. He whispered into the wind so quiet even he barely heard it. "I'm coming for you, Clara. Soon." The promise tasted like blood and salt and everything he had ever lost, and everything he refused to lose again. October 2025, Chicago. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Elena had invited 8 people, her friends, from the charity boards, the gallery openings, the circles where money spoke in whispers and diamonds were small talk. The dining table was set with crystal that caught the chandelier light like trapped stars, silver cutlery laid with military precision plates rimmed in gold. The menu was catered: seared scallops, filet mignon, truffle risotto, wines whose bottles cost more than I had ever held in my hand at one time. I served quietly, head down, invisible in the way I had learned to be invisible long ago. The children were dressed like small porcelain dolls, Mia and Max in matching navy, Sophie in pale pink tulle, Luca in a tiny velvet jacket. They sat at the far end of the table, hands folded, eyes large and watchful. Elena presided at the head, radiant, laughing at the right moments, touching arms, pouring wine with elegant turns of her wrist. I watched from the doorway between the kitchen and dining room, tray in hand, ready to clear plates or refill glasses. Max reached for his water glass. His small elbow caught the stem of Elena's wine glass. Red liquid arced through the air, splashing across the white tablecloth in a dark, spreading stain. The room went still. Elena's smile froze, then vanished. "Max," she said, voice low, controlled, deadly. "What have you done?" Max shrank back in his chair, eyes wide with instant terror. I'm sorry. Sorry is not enough." She rose slowly, chair scraping against marble. "You will apologize properly. Stand up." He obeyed, legs trembling so hard I could see them shake from across the room. Elena stepped toward him. The guest shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting, unsure whether to intervene or pretend nothing was happening. I felt it before I saw it, something dark rising in her posture, something I had seen too many times in the last weeks. She lifted her hand. The motion was deliberate, open-palmed, ready to strike. Time slowed. I moved without thinking. I dropped the tray crystal, shattering against marble in a bright, violent crash, and stepped between them. Stop. The word came out stronger than I expected, louder than I had ever spoken in this house. Elena's hand froze midair. The guests gasped. Max hid behind my legs, small hands clutching the hem of my uniform. Elena's eyes narrowed to slits. You dare? I did not move. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would burst through my ribs. My legs felt like water. But I did not move. She's a child, I said, voice shaking but steady. She made a mistake, that's all. Elena's face flushed crimson. Get out of my way, Clara. No. The single word hung in the air like smoke. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Elena's hand came down. Not on Max. On me. The slap rang out sharp and clear, snapping my head to the side. Pain bloomed across my cheek, hot, stinging, immediate. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. The room erupted in murmurs. Elena stepped back, breathing hard, eyes blazing. You're fired. Pack your things. You're gone tonight. I tasted blood where my lip had split against my teeth. Max began to cry, small, broken sobs. Sophie whimpered. Luca stared wide-eyed. I knelt slowly, gathering Max into my arms, shielding him with my body. It's okay, I whispered to him. It's okay. But it was not okay. Nothing was okay. In the service corridor beyond the swinging kitchen door, Vincent stood like stone. He had come to check the floors, routine excuse, desperate need to be close. He had seen everything. The raised hand, the slap, Clara's body jerking sideways, the blood on her lip. Something inside him snapped clean, final, irreversible. He felt the world narrow to a single point: her. Only her. The love that had been burning in him exploded into something primal, something that roared through his veins like wildfire through dry grass. He loved her. He would kill for her. He would die for her. He would burn the city down if anyone touched her again. He took one step forward, then stopped. Not yet. Not here. Not in front of witnesses who would ask questions he could not answer. But the war inside him reached a screaming crescendo remorse, howling against fury restraint, against the desperate need to storm through the door, gather her in his arms, and carry her away from this gilded cage forever. He pressed his fist to the wall until plaster cracked beneath his knuckles. I'm coming. I'm coming right now. The promise was a vow carved into bone. Later, after the guests had fled in awkward haste, after Elena had stormed to her suite, slamming doors after I had tucked the children into bed with whispered promises, I was no longer sure I could keep. I sat alone in the kitchen. The broken glass still lay scattered on the floor. No one had cleaned it up. I stared at it numb. My cheek throbbed. My lip stung. My heart felt like it had been torn in half. I had nothing left. No money. No home. No safety. And yet I would do it again. I would stand between them and any storm that came. Because they were worth it. Because they were all I had left to love. Footsteps soft, deliberate. I looked up. Tony. He stood in the doorway, cap in hand, now face fully visible, for the first time in weeks. His eyes, storm-dark, anguished, locked on the red mark across my cheek. He crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeled in front of me, reached out slow, careful, and touched the edge of the bruise with fingertips that trembled. Clara, he whispered. His voice broke on my name, and in that moment something shifted. The shadows on his face, the familiar line of his jaw, the storm in his eyes. I knew. My breath caught. Dizziness swept over me, violent, disorienting. The world tilted. I swayed. He caught me, strong arms around my waist, pulling me against his chest. Vincent, I breathed. He closed his eyes, forehead dropping to mine. Yes, the single word was raw, wrecked, full of everything he had carried alone. Tears spilled down my face, hot, silent, unstoppable. He held me tighter. I'm sorry, he said against my hair. I'm so sorry. I could not speak. I could only cling to him, the man who had watched me from the shadows, who had brought me hot chocolate in the cold, who had seen every quiet act of love I had given his children, the man who had loved me all along. And now the storm had broken, and I was no longer alone in it. October 2025. Chicago. The kitchen lights felt too bright after the dimness of the hallway shadows. My cheek still burned, where Elena's hand had landed a hot pulse that matched the frantic rhythm of my heart. Vincent knelt before me. Vincent, not Tony. his hands steady on my arms, grounding me when everything else spun. I stared at him, breath shallow, world narrowing to the storm gray of his eyes, and the raw grief carved into every line of his face. "You were here," I whispered. "All this time, yes." His voice cracked. "Every night, watching, waiting, trying to find the moment when I could stop pretending." The words landed like stones in deep water. Ripples of shock spread through me, cold and numbing. My legs gave out. He caught me again, pulling me gently onto the stool beside the island, one hand never leaving mine. "Why?" The question came out small, broken. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed proof." He looked down at our joined hands, my thin fingers lost in his strong ones. "I needed to know I wasn't imagining it. That Elena was—" He swallowed hard. "That she was hurting them. Hurting you." I felt the air leave my lungs. "You saw everything. Everything." His thumb brushed over my bruised cheek, featherlight reverent. Tears gathered in his eyes, tears from a man who looked like he had never cried before. "I saw you buy medicine with money you didn't have. I saw you stand between my son and her hand. I saw you hold them when they cried for their mother. I saw you break a little more each day, and I did nothing." The guilt in his voice was a living thing, clawing at him from the inside. I could feel it radiating from his skin. "You were protecting them," I said softly. "In your way. My way was wrong." He shook his head violently. "I should have ended it the first time, I suspected. I should have thrown her out the moment I saw the fear in their eyes. Instead, I hid. I lied. To everyone. To you." Silence stretched between us, thick, heavy, filled with the weight of weeks of unspoken truth. Then he lifted his gaze to mine, and the intensity there stole my breath. "I love you, Clara." The confession came quiet, certain like a vow spoken into stone. I felt my heart stutter, then race so fast it hurt. Dizziness washed over me again, shock, confusion, a wild, aching hope I had never dared to feel. "You can't," I whispered. "You don't know me. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I have nothing to give you." He cupped my face with both hands, thumbs brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "You are everything," he said fiercely. "You walked into my house with nothing but kindness and courage, and you gave my children back their light. You gave me back something I thought was dead. You think I care about money? About power? I would burn it all down for one more night of watching you read them stories in the dark." His words pierced me deep, sharp, beautiful. I shook my head, voice trembling. "I'm scared." "I know." He leaned closer, forehead resting against mine. "I'm terrified. I've spent years building walls so high no one could touch me. And then you walked through them like they were paper. I don't know how to do this, but I know I can't go another day pretending I don't love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life." The kitchen door swung open. Elena stood there still in her silk dress, face pale with fury. "What is this?" Vincent rose, slowly placing himself between us. His posture changed, shoulders back, eyes cold steel. "Get out," he said quietly. Elena laughed, sharp, brittle. "Excuse me," I said. "Get out." His voice dropped lower, dangerous. "You're done here. Pack your things. Leave tonight." She stared at him, then at me, realization dawning like poison. "You're back," she breathed. "You were here. All this time." Vincent didn't answer. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder, the same one he had used to capture every cruel word, every threat, every moment of terror. He pressed play. Elena's voice filled the room, cold, unmistakable. "They'll learn. Fear works better than love. Love makes them weak." The recording continued, her mocking Sophie's tears, her threatening to throw Clara out, her dismissing a child's asthma as dramatics. Elena's face drained of color. The guests from earlier had already left, but the staff, quiet, loyal, had gathered in the doorway, eyes wide. Vincent stopped the recording. "Divorce papers are being drawn up," he said. "You'll be served tomorrow. You will never see these children again. You will never come near Clara again." Elena's lips trembled. "You can't do this. I'm your fiancée. You were never my wife." His voice was ice. "And you never will be." She looked at me then, pure venom in her gaze. "You think you've won," she spat. "You're nothing. A charity case. A stray he picked up off the street." Vincent stepped forward, voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Say one more word about her, and I'll make sure every door in this city closes to you. You'll wish you'd never laid eyes on any of us." Elena flinched. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. She backed away, heels clicking frantically against marble, then turned and fled down the hallway. The door to her suite slammed. Silence fell, deep ringing. Vincent turned back to me. His eyes softened instantly. He knelt again, taking both my hands. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," he said. "I'm sorry for all of it." I looked at him, really looked. The powerful man who had built an empire. The father who had disguised himself to protect his children. The stranger who had brought me hot chocolate in the cold. The man who loved me. Tears streamed down my face. I thought I was alone, I whispered. I thought no one saw me. I saw you, he said, voice breaking. Every single day, and I fell in love with you more, with every breath you took in this house. I leaned forward, forehead against his shoulder, and let the sobs come deep, wrenching years of cold nights and empty plates and fear pouring out. He held me through it all, strong arms around my thin frame, whispering over and over, "You're safe now. You're home. I've got you." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Outside, the Chicago wind howled against the windows, fierce, relentless. But inside, in the quiet of the kitchen, with broken glass still glittering on the floor, something new was beginning. Something warm. Something unbreakable. Vincent pressed a kiss to my hair, soft, reverent. "I love you, Clara." And in the stillness that followed, I whispered back the only truth I had left. "I love you too." October 2025. Chicago. The penthouse felt different after Elena left. Not quieter, there had always been silence in these rooms, the kind that pressed against your ears like cotton but softer. The air itself seemed to exhale, as though the house had been holding its breath for months and could finally breathe again. I woke the next morning in my own bed, sunlight slanting through the tall windows in pale gold bars across the comforter. For the first time in years, I did not jolt awake, expecting cold wind or the ache of concrete. My body hurt, my cheek was swollen and purple, my lip scabbed, but the pain felt distant, muffled by something warmer than blanket safety. I rose slowly, feet touching thick carpet instead of cracked linoleum. I walked to the mirror. The woman staring back looked fragile, hollow-eyed ribs, still visible beneath thin skin, but there was color in her cheeks, now faint and tentative, like the first green after a long winter. I dressed in the softest sweater I owned, still too big, still secondhand, and went to the children. They were already gathered in the living room, small bodies curled together on the enormous sectional like a nest of birds. Mia and Max flanked Sophie, who clutched her blue bear tightly. Luca sat on the floor, stacking wooden blocks with fierce concentration. When they saw me, their eyes widened. Mia spoke first, voice small. "You're still here." I knelt, opening my arms. "I'm still here." They rushed me, 4 small bodies colliding with mine arms, wrapping around my neck, legs tangling, faces pressing against my shoulders. I held them so tightly I thought my heart might burst. "I thought she'd make you leave," Max whispered into my hair. "Never," I said. "Never again." We stayed like that for a long time, quiet, warm breathing together until footsteps sounded in the hallway. Vincent appeared in the doorway. He had changed into a simple gray sweater and dark jeans, hair still slightly damp from a shower. The shadows beneath his eyes were deeper than ever, but when he looked at us, at me, something in his face softened like ice melting under spring sun. The children looked up. Daddy, Sophie's voice trembled. He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside us. "I'm here, baby girl," he said, voice rough with unshed tears. "I'm right here." They flowed into his arms, next small hands clutching his sweater, small faces buried against his chest. He held them all at once, strong arms encircling the 4 of them, tears finally slipping down his cheeks and disappearing into their hair. "I'm so sorry," he whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." Mia lifted her head. Clara stayed. Vincent looked at me over their heads. His eyes were raw, red-rimmed, full of everything he had carried alone. "She did," he said softly. "She stayed when no one else would." After breakfast, pancakes with fresh berries, warm syrup milk in real glasses instead of sippy cups. Vincent took me aside. We walked to the terrace. The wind was gentler today, carrying the faint scent of lake water and distant rain. He stood beside me, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city that glittered below like scattered diamonds. "I've spoken to my lawyer," he said quietly. "Elena is gone. The restraining order is filed. She won't come near any of you again." I nodded, throat tight. He turned to me then, eyes searching mine. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not as the nanny, not as the help, as family, as whatever you want to be to me. To us." The words struck deep, deep enough to hurt, deep enough to heal. I looked down at my hands, thin, scarred, trembling. "I don't belong here, Vincent. Look at me. I'm nothing. I've never had anything. I don't know how to be part of this." He stepped closer, lifted my chin gently with one finger until I met his gaze. "You belong wherever you choose to be," he said. "And I want you to choose here. With us. With me." Tears blurred my vision. "I'm scared." "I know." His voice cracked. "I'm scared too. I've spent my life building walls so high no one could hurt me. And then you walked in thin, tired, carrying nothing but kindness, and you tore them down without even trying. I don't deserve you. I know that. But I love you so much it hurts to breathe when you're not near me. The confession landed like rain after drought, soft-soaking, life-giving. I reached up, touched his face, rough stubble, warm skin, the faint tremor beneath. I love you too, I whispered. I think I've loved you since the first night you brought me hot chocolate. I just didn't know it was you. He closed his eyes, forehead dropping to mine. We stood like that, two broken people holding each other together, while the city hummed far below. Later that afternoon, while the children napped, Vincent took me to his office. The room was vast, dark wood, leather-bound books, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. He opened a safe behind a painting and withdrew a thick envelope. "These are yours," he said, inside a bank card with my name on it. A deed to a small apartment in a safe neighborhood, not extravagant but clean, warm mine. A trust fund set up for my future, enough to never worry about food, heat, or shoes again. I stared at the papers, hands shaking so badly the pages rustled. "I can't." "You can," he said gently. "And you will. Not because I want to buy you. Because you deserve to never be cold again. Never hungry. Never afraid." Tears spilled over. I pressed the papers to my chest. "Thank you," I whispered. He pulled me into his arms, strong, steady home. "I would give you the world if you asked," he murmured against my hair. "But all I really want is you." That night after the children were asleep, we sat together on the terrace again. The sky was clear, stars faint against the city glow. Vincent took my hand. "I have enemies," he said quietly. "People who want what I have. Who will try to take it. I won't lie to you, I've done things I'm not proud of. But I'm stepping back. The legitimate businesses only. The children. You. That's what matters now." I squeezed his hand. "I'm not afraid." He looked at me, really looked, and something fierce and tender passed between us. "I'll protect you," he said. "Always." "And I'll protect you," I answered softly. "From carrying it all alone." He smiled, then small, real, beautiful. We sat in silence, hands linked, hearts slowly mending. The wind was cold, but I was warm. And for the first time in my life, I believed the warmth might last. October 2025. Chicago. The first week after Elena's departure felt like walking on new ice, thin, beautiful, and terrifyingly fragile. The penthouse rooms seemed larger without her, sharp footsteps echoing down the halls. The children laughed more freely. Meals tasted warmer. Nights were no longer pierced by the sound of locked doors or muffled sobs. I began to believe tentatively, quietly, that safety could be real. Vincent was careful with me, always careful. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply was there, bringing me tea when my hands shook from exhaustion, sitting beside me on the terrace while the children slept, holding my hand in the dark when nightmares of cold park benches and empty pockets still woke me, gasping. His love was not loud. It was steady, deep, like the lake beneath the city, calm on the surface, powerful enough to drown a person if they ever doubted its strength. But the shadows he carried were never far. That Friday night, the sky was low and bruised with clouds. The children had fallen asleep early after a long day of park play, real park play, with swings and laughter, and no one telling them to sit still and behave. Vincent and I sat in the living room, fire crackling low in the hearth, a blanket draped across our knees. He looked at me with eyes that still carried too much guilt. "I should have told you sooner," he said quietly, "about who I really am. The things I've done, the enemies I've made." I touched his face. "You told me when it mattered. That's enough." He shook his head. "It's not. Because they're coming." The words landed cold against my skin. Before I could ask, his phone buzzed, sharp, insistent. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed, hardened into something I had never seen directed at me. "Stay here," he said, voice low. "Lock the doors behind me. Don't open them for anyone but me." "Vincent," he kissed me quick, fierce tasting of fear and love and everything he had never said aloud. "I love you," he whispered against my mouth. "Always remember that." Then he was gone. I locked the doors as instructed, heart hammering against my ribs. Minutes stretched into eternity. Then the lights flickered. The power died. Darkness swallowed the penthouse. I froze, breath shallow. From the hallway came the sound of breaking glass, sharp, deliberate, footsteps, multiple, heavy. I ran to the children's rooms, bare feet, silent on marble pulse, roaring in my ears. They were already awake, small faces pale in the moonlight that leaked through the windows. Clara Sophie whimpered. "Shh," I breathed. "Come with me." Quietly, I gathered them, Luca in my arms, Sophie clinging to my leg. Mia and Max holding each other's hands, and moved toward the hidden panic room. Vincent had shown me the day after Elena left. A small, steel-lined closet disguised as a linen cupboard. We slipped inside just as voices echoed down the hall, low, male, angry. "Find the kids. Boss wants leverage. I pulled the door shut. The lock clicked softly. Inside was darkness, a single emergency light, bottled water blankets, a small monitor showing security feeds. On the screen, 4 men in dark jackets moving through the penthouse. Efficient, practiced. One carried a flashlight. Another held a phone to his ear. They're here somewhere. Moretti's soft now. He'll fold. I pressed my back to the wall, children huddled against me. My arms shook so violently I was afraid I'd drop Luca. Outside, the men searched opening doors, overturning furniture, voices growing more frustrated. Then a new voice, Vincent's cold, lethal. "You're in my home." Silence. Then the unmistakable sound of bodies colliding, fists, grunts, furniture crashing. The monitor showed Vincent fighting in the foyer, 3 against 1, but he moved like a man possessed. He took a hard hit to the ribs, staggered, then drove his elbow into one man's throat. Another grabbed him from behind. Vincent twisted, slammed the man against the wall. Blood appeared on his shirt, dark spreading. My breath caught. He was bleeding. The children whimpered. I covered their ears, whispered, "It's okay. Daddy's protecting us." But inside, terror clawed me open. He was hurt. For us. For me. The fight spilled toward the hallway. Vincent took another blow, hard to the jaw. He went down on one knee. The men closed in. I felt something snap inside me, something primal, maternal, unbreakable. I looked at the children, my children now, in every way that mattered, and whispered, "Stay here. Don't move. I'll be right back." Mia's eyes widened. "Clara, no." I kissed each forehead, then opened the panic room door just enough to slip through. The hallway was dark, broken furniture scattered like bones. I moved silently, heart thundering, until I reached the kitchen. There, on the counter, a heavy marble rolling pin. I picked it up. It was cold, solid, real. I stepped into the foyer. Vincent was on the floor, one man pinning his arms, another raising a fist. The third turned, saw me. I didn't hesitate. I swung. The rolling pin connected with the side of his knee hard. He screamed, went down. The other 2 froze. Vincent surged upward, breaking free, driving his fist into one man's stomach, then the other's jaw. They staggered. Sirens wailed in the distance, his crew finally arriving. The intruders scrambled, fleeing through the shattered terrace doors. Vincent turned to me. Blood streaked his face. His shirt was soaked red. He staggered forward. "Clara," I dropped the rolling pin. It clattered against marble. He reached me, pulled me into his arms, so hard the air left my lungs. "You're safe," he whispered, voice wrecked. "You're safe." I clung to him, feeling the wet warmth of his blood against my sweater, feeling his heart hammering against mine. "You're hurt," I sobbed. "Just a scratch," he lied, holding me tighter. His men burst in, loyal, armed, efficient. They secured the penthouse. Vincent never let me go. Later, after medics had bandaged his shoulder, a deep gash from a broken bottle after the children were soothed and tucked back into bed after the broken glass was swept away. Vincent sat on the edge of our bed, head in his hands. I knelt in front of him, took his blood-streaked hands in mine. "I almost lost you," he said, voice raw. "All of you. Because of me. Because of the life I built." I lifted his face. "You didn't lose us. We're here." Tears slipped down his cheeks, silent, unstoppable. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. I pressed my forehead to his. "You already have me," I said. "All of me. Forever." He pulled me onto his lap, careful of his bandages, and held me like I was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. "I love you," he said against my neck. "More than anything. More than power. More than life." I wrapped my arms around him, thin frame against his strong one, and felt for the first time the full weight of what love could be. Not just warmth, not just safety, but a force strong enough to face darkness and win. Outside, the city lights glittered, cold, distant, indifferent. Inside, we held each other in the quiet, and the storm finally began to pass. October 2025. Chicago. The days that followed the night of broken glass carried a strange hush, like the city itself understood something sacred had taken root inside those high walls. The penthouse, once a glittering cage of fear, slowly transformed into something softer, something alive. Sunlight poured through the tall windows in the mornings, warming floors that had always felt cold. The children's laughter echoed down hallways that once rang with silence. And every evening, when the sky turned the color of bruised plums, Vincent and I found each other again and again, learning the shape of love in the quiet spaces between words. He never rushed me. He never demanded anything I wasn't ready to give. Yet the intensity of what grew between us was almost frightening, passionate, consuming a fire that burned away every doubt I had ever carried about whether someone like me could ever be wanted, truly wanted by someone like him. One afternoon, while the children napped, he found me in the library. I was sitting on the window seat, knees drawn up, staring at the lake. My thin sweater hung loose on my shoulders. The same sweater I had worn the night he first brought me hot chocolate as Tony. He crossed the room without speaking, knelt in front of me, and rested his forehead against my knee. "I still wake up sometimes," he said quietly, "and think I dreamed you." I ran my fingers through his dark hair. "I wake up sometimes and think I'm still sleeping on that park bench, waiting for the sun to rise so the cold won't hurt so much." He lifted his head. His eyes were wet. "You will never be cold again. Not one more night. Not one more hour." The promise was fierce, almost violent in its tenderness. He rose, pulled me to my feet, and kissed me slow at first, then deeper, hungrier, as though every second we had wasted pretending to be strangers had to be reclaimed in that single moment. My hands fisted in his shirt. His arms banded around my waist, lifting me until my feet left the floor. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathing hard, hearts racing in perfect, frantic rhythm. "I love you," he said against my mouth. "I love you so much it hurts. And I'm terrified every day that I'll wake up and you'll be gone because you'll finally see who I really am and realize you deserve better." I cupped his face. "I see you, Vincent. Every shadow, every scar, every mistake. And I still choose you, every single day." He closed his eyes, a single tear slipping free. The man who had once ruled this city with quiet steel was trembling in my arms. That night, after the children were asleep, he led me to the rooftop terrace. The city glittered below us like a sea of stars. He had arranged a small table, white cloth, candles, 2 chairs, nothing extravagant, just intimate. Just us. He pulled out my chair. I sat feeling small and overwhelmed and impossibly loved. He remained standing. "Clara," he said, voice rough with emotion, "I spent most of my life believing power meant control. Control of streets, of people, of fear. Then you walked into my home thin, tired, carrying nothing but kindness, and you showed me what real strength looks like." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. My breath caught. He opened it. Inside was a simple platinum band with a single modest diamond, clean, honest, nothing flashy. "I don't want to give you the world," he said. "I want to give you a life where you never have to wonder if tomorrow will be safe, where you never have to count pennies for medicine, where you never have to be afraid again." Tears blurred my vision. He knelt. "Marry me, Clara. Not because I can protect you, but because I want to spend every day of the rest of my life learning how to deserve you." I covered my mouth with shaking hands. The wind was cold against my cheeks, but I felt only warmth, deep, burning, eternal. "Yes," I whispered. Then louder, stronger, "Yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Then he stood, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me under the October sky, slow, deep, full of every promise we had both waited lifetimes to make. We moved to a quieter home outside the city a few weeks later, a house with a yard, with trees, with space for the children to run without fear. Vincent stepped fully away from the shadows he had once ruled. The legitimate businesses thrived under trusted hands. The nights grew peaceful. And every evening, no matter how tired we were, we found each other, hands reaching, hearts open, love fierce and gentle all at once. Because love does not see skin color. Love does not measure bank accounts. Love sees the heart beneath the hunger, beneath the power, beneath the fear, and chooses it anyway. And in that choosing, we found something more valuable than wealth, more powerful than fear each other. As this story comes to a close, let us reflect together on the knowledge hidden within it. There is so much knowledge here about the strength of quiet courage, the healing power of compassion, the true meaning of protection. This tale carries a profound lesson about never judging someone by their circumstances. A lesson about forgiveness, a lesson about second chances, a lesson about choosing love over pride, and a final gentle lesson that real riches lie in the heart. Through every moment of hardship and redemption, we are reminded of the importance of education, not just of the mind, but of the soul, of the heart, of understanding, of empathy, and of grace. To everyone watching this video, I wish you abundant good health, a joyful life filled with laughter and daily peace that settles deep into your bones. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the YouTube channel Alex Truths, so you never miss any of our daily engaging videos. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let us grow this community of heartfelt stories together. Now tell me in the comments below, how did this story make you feel? Does it remind you of anything in your own life? How do you see love, compassion, and second chances playing out in the real world? Share from the deepest parts of your heart. I read every comment, and I truly listen. Thank you for being here with me today. Goodbye for now, and I promise see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.